Welcome to this week's episode of the Animals at Home podcast. My name is Dylan. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you're new to the show, then welcome. If you're not subscribed, make sure you hit subscribe button on whichever podcasting app you use, and definitely subscribe on YouTube as well. I do post all the video versions of the podcast on YouTube, so if you want to check those out, they are there for you. As I said last week, I was able to go make a donation to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy based off of the income from the channel. I think the total donation was around $81, something along those lines, which brings our total donation up to about $350. So I'm super excited about that. I know it's still a small number, but I'm really working towards making that number much bigger. So every quarter or so, still going to continue to make donations based off of the income from YouTube, as well as anything else. If you do purchase a Animals at Home t-shirt, $5 does go directly to the charity. So there's a bunch of little ways that I collect donations, but really excited to help protect parts of the Peruvian rainforest with the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. If you are looking to support the show, definitely go onto the Apple podcasting app and give it a 5-star rating. I think about 50 of you guys have done that so far, which I'm super grateful for. So thank you if you've done that. And you can also share the content. Share it on Facebook or on Instagram. That is a huge help. I want to take this moment to thank CustomReptileHabitats.com for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you are in need of any gold standard reptile equipment, please go check them out. Links are in the description as well as the show notes. On today's episode of the podcast, I had the pleasure of chatting with another Canadian creator. Today I chatted with Adam Wickens from the YouTube channel Wickens Wicked Reptiles. Adam's channel is only about a year old and it's now almost at 17,000 subscribers. Especially in the last few months, his channel has really blown up. He's done a really good job creating thorough care guides for the species he keeps, but he also creates these really interesting top 5 lists. Top 5 most illegal reptiles, top 5 mutant reptiles, top 5 hybrid reptiles. Really interesting, engaging content that sparks a lot of conversation and some controversy as well, but I think it was really interesting. And of course, we also chat about just working on YouTube and creating content, especially from a Canadian's point of view, because there is some differences between the hobby from US to Canada. And we also discuss his outdoor enclosures. He keeps a few animals outside, which I was super curious about, so we do discuss that. Let's jump into the episode. Here's my conversation with Adam. Well, Adam, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I think you're only like the 5th or 6th Canadian I've had on the show, so it's always good to talk to another Canadian.
Hey, I've started following your channel before I started a channel myself, and it was very cool to see like another Canadian voice like in this niche especially. Yeah,
there's not a ton of us, and I think I always see that you get ragged on this in the comments, and I have maybe even done it as well. There's a few videos you wear a Boston Bruins hat, and for people that don't realize, living in Ontario, that's actually like a legitimate dangerous behavior.
It's a hazard to my health, especially when I go to Toronto to Expos and I wear a Boston. People kind of look at me with a stink eye, but it is what it is. Born and raised a Boston sports fan, so that's the way it is.
So you did not grow up in Ontario then?
I did grow up in Ontario, but my dad grew up in Nova Scotia. So the closest team, right? So it was either that or the Canadians. And I don't know, back in the day, they didn't like French people, I guess. So Boston was their team. And that's where I was raised, as a Boston sports fan.
Got it. So in terms of your reptile journey then, so you're born and raised in Ontario. How did you get into the reptile hobby? What was the first animal that came into your care?
So like officially captive, besides like catching frogs and stuff, I was pretty late. I think I was 19. And I was working with this girl. We worked at a call center together, and she had 2 bearded dragons, and they produced eggs. So she had to separate them, which they shouldn't have been together in the first place. And I was talking about getting a leopard gecko maybe. So she said, well, do you want a bearded dragon? And I said, yes. And then the next day I went to whatever pet store, got everything I needed, and I had a bearded dragon. So it was just kind of like on a whim, even though I was doing the research before for a bunch of different species. And then the other bearded dragon came into my care, and then a bunch of crested geckos and leopard geckos, and it just kind of evolved from there.
How long did it take you to go from that initial bearded dragon to like the classic collection expansion that we all go through?
It took a while actually, because when I was 19, I got into bodybuilding, and that's like took over my entire life basically. So I had 3 reptiles at the time, 2 bearded dragons, and then a leopard gecko. And then when I was done with that, I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to do now? And I got 1 snake, and then I got a whole bunch of snakes. So I think it was probably 5 years ago that I really started to expand the collection.
Yeah, bodybuilding is such an insane process. Hey, whenever I see people doing it, it's just like the most amount of time on every part of your day is dedicated towards that.
Yeah, there's no days, like there's no such thing as Christmas off. Like there was, the gym that I go to is 24 hours and there was 20 of us there on Christmas. So, like there's no days off. And have to eat every 2 hours. It's the most crazy thing ever, but those days are behind me. My shoulder doesn't really work the way that it used to anymore, but it's a lot more fun. And I do stand-up comedy now, so keeping your clothes on stage is more beneficial and fun to me than standing up there for 8 minutes a year in like a Speedo. So it's good. It's cool. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I've done the Speedo thing. Being a swimmer, I was in a Speedo for 20 years, so I know how you feel. So that's interesting. I didn't realize that you were a stand-up comedian, but it does make sense because you're so good on camera, and like when you're speaking in front of your camera, you just deliver everything so well. Have you always been good at that, or how did those two things link together?
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I don't know if it's always been like that. I tried stand-up one time when I was 19, and that was when I was like, okay, am I going to be the reptile guy, the stand-up guy, or the bodybuilding guy? And I went the one way, which is the one you wanted to go with when you're young, right? Because you only have one opportunity. But I grew up on like Jeff Foxworthy was always playing in my house. The first book I ever read was his book. And then I found George Carlin when I was like 12 or 13. And then I realized, okay, well, one day I'm going to do this. And then I decided to do it, and I ran with it. And then now there's not much comedy going on, but it's what I love to do. It's just that in Canada, like where we are, there's really no such thing as being able to make a living doing it. You got to move across the border, and it's tough to do that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. But I can definitely see the connection now. So in terms of your YouTube channel, the YouTube channel is actually fairly fresh. It's not like it's a super old channel. You started it, was it a year ago or so?
January 14th, 2019 was when I started it. Yeah.
So tell me about why you started it, because as you were saying, in the Canadian space, it's not crowded, but in general on YouTube, the reptile space is pretty crowded. Like it's pretty saturated in a lot of ways. And you actually have a channel that's taken off and it's done well. So was there something that you thought you could add to the YouTube sphere, or you just thought I would just go for it and see what happens?
To be honest, like I was just out of work for a couple weeks at the time, and a guy who runs comedy shows that I've done a bunch of shows for him before. And he's like, man, you got all these reptiles. Like, why don't you do something with it? You're not working right now. You have all this time, and you have the personality to do it. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a try. Because I've done other YouTube things that never really worked. That weren't about reptiles at all. So I just tried it, and then I just decided, all right, I'm going to stick with this for a year. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then I'm done with it. But then it just did. It just started to go somewhere, and I'm very happy with the growth. By no means am I a snake discovery getting 14,000 subs a day or anything, but I feel very confident with the way that it's going, and I am very appreciative for anyone who's paid attention for long enough to subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, because it definitely, I would say probably your last like 3 months or so, it seems like there was a big spike.
Yeah, I think it was like I hit 5,000 subscribers in November, and then ever since then it just really took off. And I think there's certain videos that you do that just kind of spike you, and then the analytics start to like you, and you grow this momentum, and then eventually you go into a recession like kind of my channel isn't right now. But it's been great growth, and I think that's the last 6 months, less than 6 months, probably 4 or 5 months.
Was there something specific that you were going to tackle making the channel, or were you just thinking I'll just show my animals and then just go from there?
I just wanted to, I like the fact that it's a Canadian thing, because there's, like you said, there's not a lot of Canadian voices in this niche. So just kind of a different perspective, and having different species or a limited amount of species, where in the States, we can't have rock iguanas here, things like that, right? So just kind of speaking on that front, and that resonates well with Europeans, because a lot of European countries are limited as well. But I just thought, all right, well, you're a funny guy on stage, be a funny guy kind of in front of a camera, and maybe you could open up the reptile niche or a love for reptiles to people who maybe never would have thought anything except for that's a snake, that's scary. Just kind of bring other eyes and bring an open mind to other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting world, the YouTube world, especially trying to figure out those analytics and whatnot. Like it's always just a total mystery in terms of what's good and what's bad. But it seems like you have definitely discovered something, because you have your lists, for example, have really taken off. I'm sure that has been a huge part of your growth, and you've added something that I think wasn't there before. It's sort of a fresh take on the hobby in general. And I want to talk about those lists in a second, but kind of getting back to that, being a keeper in Canada, there is actually a difference. Like it's more difficult. The supplies are not as easy, it seems like, to get. Everything you see on YouTube, on the American channels, you're like, I wish I could get that, but it's impossible to get here. And just like you said, the variety of animals that we have here is just definitely not as high. Like you see so many different types of animals on YouTube, and here, if you find them, they're super expensive or wild caught and whatnot, and it's just a different world.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. The expensive part is the one thing. And you see all these other channels, this costs you about this much. And then you go to a reptile expo, and whatever that thing is, even deli cups here are more expensive than in the States, never mind, everything else. And I've got a lot of friends now because of YouTube in the States that run YouTube channels also. Oh yeah, I bought a Mexican black king snake this week for $200, and then I go to Kijiji or whatever classified site, it's like $600 for one. So, or even if you can find one, and they're always babies, and sometimes it's like not even a captive raised baby, not for Mexican blacks, but other species. So I think you're really hitting it right on the head what it means and why being Canadian is a little bit more difficult, or there's more challenges than if you're south of the border.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a different world, and hopefully as the hobby grows in Canada, we'll have more opportunity. People start captive breeding those specific animals. Obviously, there's the border creates a big block. Having captive bred animals make their way up here and whatnot. So I want to talk about your lists, because obviously a big part of your channel is care guides. Like, you've done really well with some care guides. They've taken off, and you have thousands and thousands of views on those. But these lists are really interesting. How did that come to you?
I was just trying to think, and I think the first one that I ever did that really took off was, I thought, okay, well, if people like lists, they've always been working. It was like maybe 1,000 views a video or something. And then if you talk about something that's a little bit controversial, or you make the title controversial, but spin it back in the video to something that is useful and not controversial. So I did one, I think it was called Mutant Reptiles. It's about hybrid reptiles. And that was in September. And I thought the analytics were broken because I've never seen a video shoot that high that quick. So, and I thought, okay, well, now I'm on to something. And then I did one about, controversial reptiles or dangerous reptiles. And the Canadians love that one. I don't know if you're part of the Facebook groups, holy cow. But I just thought people like lists, they always work really well. And then if you do a list about something that someone wants to see or is enticing from the title, but then you make the content so that it's entertaining or interesting and not super controversial, then I don't know. That's just kind of my game plan when I do these lists.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like the title is a bit clickbaity, but then when you watch the video, it's not. It is exactly what it is. It's not like, oh, I'm disappointed. It's like, oh, you're talking about exactly like the title says, and it seems like one of those things where, oh, I'm going to click on this, and it's not going to be at all what the title says, but it's definitely not. So, did you consciously make like SEO change? Like, are you trying to optimize the channel for certain videos in terms of keywords or anything, or were you just trying
I try
things?
A little bit. I don't think that the keywords or the tags, I guess, they're so hidden now when you upload videos, right? And I don't know if they help as much anymore, but I know that if you say the word, like whatever keyword in the title, in the description, and then you actually say it, I don't know how verbally they pick it up, but apparently they do, then it all matches, and the algorithm likes that. But like you said, I think the very important thing with these kind of clickbaity titles is give the people what they clicked for, because if they don't, they will not subscribe. Your video will get 2 minutes of view time and no one will watch it. So if you're going to make something like that, do the research, do the work, and at least make it what people think they're actually clicking.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing you want is people clicking off and then hitting the thumbs down. Like, that's going to be the worst thing for your analytics. So in terms of your process of making those, so for example, like you did the most, I think it was the mutant video or the hybrids video. I can't exactly remember the title. How did you go about what's your process compiling a list?
So I think people don't really realize how long it takes to do.
I bet it takes long.
It takes forever, and not even just the editing. Like, editing a video can take up to 8 hours just for the editing. But before I even shoot it, I'll do a few weeks. I'll have an idea, and then maybe next month I'll do the video. And in that time, I'll talk to someone who breeds sperm balls, right? I'll reach out to a Bob Clark whoever. It's tough to get a hold of those type of people, but smaller breeders who breed these things or have a little bit more experience with them. I'm trying to do, I've got a video in the works right now, and I'm talking to some breeders of some scaleless snakes. It has something to do with that. So you get some first class or first hand information, and then you put it down, you write it down, just kind of like I imagine you're doing for this video, and you just figure out what you want to talk about. You let it take you from there, and then you edit the video and you post it and hope for the best. That's my process. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the other thing that can happen if you make lists is people are going to disagree with it, and it might create some friction with the viewers. But I think a lot of times it also sparks just really good discussion, which is another good thing for YouTube. YouTube likes to see comments, I think. And I imagine your videos are getting lots of comments because people might go, hey, I agree with the first three, but the last two I completely disagree with.
Yeah, and I think on YouTube it's weird because as Canadians, we're always seen as like these super happy, super nice to each other people. On YouTube, I get mostly positive feedback, almost all positive. I very rarely have a negative comment. But then I like to share on Reddit, not so much, but Facebook groups especially. And I try to engage people like, hey, this is my video. What do you think about this? And then if they watch it, great. But it's always the Canadian groups that just they have issues or whatever it is on the I don't agree with this, but it's not I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this, and you're an idiot because this,
Yeah.
and this. It's like, all right, well, we can just disagree, man. Like, let's have a conversation about it. Change my mind, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I know we both done a video on how crazy social media is, and you're right. YouTube, same with me. 99% of the comments super positive. Really, people are enjoying the content, adding good. Even if they disagree, it's in a positive way with in good spirit. And then yeah, Facebook, you have these weird sections where people just no longer behave like humans.
And it's so weird too because we're at the end of the day, we're all humans and we're all part of this niche, and it's a weird thing. Not as much as we ingrain ourselves in our lives revolve around reptiles to a certain extent. Most people, like regular people, don't know anything about reptiles. So we're all part of like this club or this group together. Why are we being so rude and ruthless and just savages? I just don't understand. I don't get it at all. If you disagree with someone, just talk to them, shoot them a private message. If they're doing something really bad, that's something else. But I'm sitting in a basement surrounded by reptiles talking to a camera like a weirdo. Like I'm not hurting a reptile. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So if
yeah.
you disagree, just shoot me a message. Let's talk about it, and I'll make a video about how I was wrong. I like making those videos too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for example, something like the hybrids, do people get mad at you for highlighting those types of things? Like, is that some of the negative feedback you'd get?
The most feedback that I got was negative from that one is people saying that I was promoting it, which I wasn't. I was just talking about it. And that's why I wanted to do the video about the mutant reptiles, which was a different one about like scaleless and things like that.
Right, right,
And I
right, right.
was, yeah, I was trying to say that I don't agree. Like I don't breed spider ball pythons. If you do, great. I don't breed scaleless stuff. If you do, great. And just kind of saying this is why I don't do it. But also, if someone does it, just talk to them and ask them why, and don't be a jerk. That's basically it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. There was a difference between the mutant ones and the hybrid ones. And the hybrid video that you did, I didn't even know about some of those hybrids. Like, it's really crazy, some of the pairings that people have made in the hobby.
Yeah, they're very interesting. I don't know. I personally don't have an issue with them because although some of them can be rebred, no one is buying a Burmese ball python hybrid and not knowing. Like no one doesn't know. And also the thing is too, even if you don't know, you can't afford it because if you don't know, you likely don't have the money in order to afford it. And if you do have the money to afford it, you have the knowledge also because why else would you buy something like that? So I don't know. That's what people always said is, you're muddying the waters. And I don't know, Indonesian to northern blue tongue skink. I understand that makes a little bit more sense because, one is more expensive than the other and you can't get northerns brought into the country anymore where you can with Indonesians. So that's a different thing. But berms and balls, I mean, there's a million of each. So if you put them together and you make a 10-foot snake that looks like a ball python, that's pretty cool to me.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely interesting, and for sure, there's two different sort of factions of people that some people really hate it, and for me, I like clean, like keeping localities clean, like you're saying, keeping things that are very much the same species but different localities. As soon as you mix them, you can never unmix them. But the hybrids, there's something really interesting. I don't think I would ever purchase a hybrid myself, although like one of my boas is a Central American and Columbian boa hybrid, and I just bought it because I thought it was. I didn't really even know anything about snakes at the time. It was like, the first boa I bought, and I don't have a problem with him. He's a great snake, but it is like something like is it the Burmese and the reticulated python? Was that the what was it called? Bat eater?
Yeah, it's a bad eater. And I think those are cool. And the other thing too is like if you like certain characteristics, and that's why I think super balls, which is what am I trying to say here? A blood python to a ball python are so popular because blood pythons can be kind of nasty and ball pythons are the exact opposite. But ball pythons can look kind of boring to people and blood pythons look awesome. So if you can get two, and that's the thing with the bad eaters is retics are fast and they've got this voracious appetite where Burmese pythons are like the gentle giants of the snake world from the people that I know that have handled them. That's kind of the comparison that they make. So if you want something that looks like a retic but acts like a berm, then you can kind of sort of get that.
Yeah, yeah. And they look so crazy, those bat eaters. Like I would never have guessed that's what that combination would turn out like.
And that's the thing is there's all these morphs but I don't know, I like the way that natural snakes and natural lizards look. I like the way that a normal ball python looks, which is why I featured one in my last video, because it's not all about morphs. And even though it's a $10 snake, or I bought them for $5 before, I think that they're beautiful. And if you can take a natural of this and a natural of this and make something that is not really a morph but a hybrid, it's just like a new thing, something totally different than this morph game that we've been playing for the last 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. So in terms of your own story, did you, as I know you had racks and things when you started, or I assume you were breeding ball pythons, or was it mostly leopard geckos?
So before, it's mostly leopard geckos now. I've only got a few pairs, and I breed hognose snakes, and I do have a pair of ball pythons I'm trying to breed. But before I started the channel in 2017, I did a lot of ball python breeding, and I got out of it eventually. It just wasn't what I wanted to do, and I wasn't making any money doing it really, because I'm sure in Canada it's really hard to sell the animals you produce a lot of the time. So it's $3.75 for a rat, just I don't know, as an example, and then you have 20 ball pythons, and the females need to be fed every week. Yeah, it wasn't financially responsible for me to continue doing that without making, and I couldn't sell most of the animals. So I just stopped doing that. But now I have this platform and I get, 10 messages a day about, hey, can I buy this, that, and the other thing? So everything's basically sold before it even hatches. And I think that's the responsible way to breed, because you don't want to have a bunch of things that you can't sell and you can't take care of properly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's so easy when you're a new person into the hobby to go down I want to breed ball pythons, because it looks so fun. And especially when you add the morph game into there, like you're just sort of playing, it's creating these really neat combinations, and you kind of maybe see like maybe potential of making some money. And I did the same thing. Like when I first got my boas, I was like designing racks in my head. Like this is before I started the channel as well. And yeah, eventually you kind of have to step back and go, this might not be the best thing for my pocketbook, but also I'm going to have animals that now exist that didn't need to exist potentially.
Well, and because when I first started following your channel, like way before I started my own, what really interested me in your channel is you build stuff. Like you take windows and then make like your own enclosure for it. I think the way that I learned to put a heat panel onto a PVC was from one of your videos. So like, do you enjoy doing that? Like, do you enjoy building the stuff and like the racks and things like that as much as keeping stuff inside of them?
Oh yeah, the building is great. Like the process of creating an enclosure and putting the decor in there is just, I think, one of the best parts about the hobby, in my opinion. And you build as well.
Yeah, and I had no skills whatsoever before I started doing this, and I built. My dad helped me. He's not a great carpenter, but he actually knows what he's doing, where I didn't before I started. But the enclosures that you see in some of the reptile rooms, the big white melamine enclosures, those are the first things I ever built with the help of my dad, who kind of knew what he was doing. And then ever since then, I built a bunch of racks by myself, and some of them I don't even have anymore because I sold them at the ball python collection a couple of years ago. But I love building stuff and building the outdoor enclosures, and people don't really like that, but I like building those too. It's a lot of fun. I like my really low level of carpentry.
Well, yeah, you definitely get to push your skill level into a new, and the first few enclosures that you make are just going to be horrible, but it's totally part of the process of learning to care for the animal. And that was something that we had talked about kind of on through DM, was I think that movement away from tubs and small racking systems towards big enclosures seems to be happening now. That seems to be kind of a general meme within the within the reptile hobby. And I'm sure you promote that as well. You're happy to see that.
Yeah, and I think I would never say that there's something wrong with racks inherently. Like if you watch a snake discovery, I mean, who can argue those are great enclosures for those animals? But if you're one of those people that has a piece of paper and a water bowl and that's it, I don't know. I personally think that a little bit of enrichment is needed. And although snakes may not be, a primate or a dolphin in terms of intelligence, they probably get something out of climbing over a branch or climbing through some fake foliage or whatever. So for me, when people started, kind of knocking the way I was keeping animals, I rethought it, and I took the criticism in a positive way and I adjusted. And I thought, okay, well, you guys are right. And then now I've got one ball python in a rack still, just because right now I can't go get PVC that I just bought because you can't touch anything or talk to anybody right now. But I have a bunch of PVCs that are coming. Eventually I'm going to have nothing in racks except for maybe a few ball pythons, or not ball pythons, leopard geckos, just because I do breed them and I have good luck selling them. And I've produced, I don't even know what I would call it. Like I've never seen purples in these animals like the ones that I produce. So I that's why I continue to do it, because they're a little bit different than anything else you see on a reptile show table type thing.
Yeah, and animals that are being bred to be sold right away are not spending a lifetime in a rack, except for the breeders, but you want to keep those clean and make sure everything's happening there. But the actual little baby geckos, I don't know, how long do you keep a baby before you sell it?
I just make sure that it's eating and growing properly. There's sometimes it's 2 months, some other times it's 5. It totally depends, but I've never had anything that I haven't kept for longer than 7 or 8 months before.
Right, and then it ends up in someone's home, where ideally they're creating a great enclosure for it. And yeah, it's one of the, I think the rack, the very plain, like you said, you can do a rack system right, that's for sure. And but that plain, sterile, industrialized style rack is very old school. And as much as those old school guys like to get, be rude on Facebook, they're starting to lose some traction, I think, and younger people are coming into the hobby that are seeing it from a different point of view and going, hey, I want to actually create a big enclosure. Either I'm going to build it, or I'm just going to enjoy the process of creating an enclosure with lots of decor, and then you're able to watch the animal behave naturally, which is a huge benefit of that.
And I think that's why we all got into this in the first place. None of us got into this to try to make $1 million breeding reptiles. We all got into this because we grew up loving animals, and for most of us, reptiles, obviously. So I think that to watch these animals in their as natural an environment as you can create for them is the most enriching and most exciting part. That's why I got into it. When I first got my first bearded dragon, I tried to set it up so elaborately, and you can't do that if you have 100 animals and you're trying to create a supply. But if you only have a few, I think that's really, and looking behind you, obviously you subscribe to that idea too. So I'm trying to do that as well. And I would like to say thank you to anyone who kind of came down on me in a nice, constructive way and saying, hey, you need to do better. And I took that and I ran with it. And I think I'm going in the right direction. So
when you say people came down on you, was that when you started your channel and you were showing some things that you had some comments coming in that were saying, hey, this isn't right? Or
yeah. And the ones that I took seriously are the ones that sent me a DM, hey man, just so you know, this is what mine looks like. This is why yours isn't the best it could be. The people who come down and just start like calling me 4-letter word, like I don't take those people seriously. But the people who, took the time to write a paragraph and say, hey, I think this would be beneficial, not saying you have to do this, but I think maybe you'd like if you did this. I took those people seriously, and I've had a lot of really positive feedback from those same people, 6 months later, 12 months later, saying, hey, I'm really glad that you did that. It's really cool. So thank you to anyone who took the time to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting how much more effective sending a comment like that can be, rather than calling them names and whatnot. And it's sort of a trick that I had someone comment. They're a listener. They listen to the show all the time, and they so maybe they're listening to this right now. The last couple episodes I posted I posted a pretty rude comment, but also like lots of swearing and attacking the individual who was on the show. And it said in the comment like they're a big fan of my show, but they really hated this episode. I was like, well, that's fine. So I just commented back like, no problem that there's a disagreement in terms of the opinion, but if you follow my work, you know that I'm about clear, concise dialogue and debate, and I want that without negative language. It's really important. And what I said to them is, the negative language that you're bringing in, or the attack that you're bringing in, actually weakens your argument. Like it doesn't make your argument sound better, it makes it sound worse. I said, which is unfortunate, because I think you probably have something interesting to share on this topic. And to their credit, they were awesome. They came back, they actually edited the comment, cleaned it up, and left the disagreement in there, which is perfectly fine, but took away the swearing and took away the sort of ad hominem attack. And it's like, that's perfect. But as creators, we almost always have to stay on top of those people, because people get emotional, right? And they don't think, and they're just like, this is just really pissing me off, I'm just going to send off a comment. And you do it before you think about it. And then they go, after they think, they go, okay, then maybe that was a bit much. But on Facebook, that doesn't really happen. It's like people are attacking all over the place.
And I think to a lesser degree too, if you as the creator are entertaining these people, it kind of makes you look a little bit dumb too. And I fall into this trap all the time, where it's like, and I look back and I think about it, why am I even paying attention to what this person is saying? This person doesn't actually care about my animals or what I'm doing. They care about showing that they know more than me. And that's all it is. It's just a measuring competition of, I know more than you. That's what half these conversations or half these comments are. And I feel kind of dumb even responding to them. But the people, like you said, that your listener, where they will go back and say, you know what, I was wrong to say that. I still have the same point, but let me convey it in a way that you'll actually take it seriously and maybe react to it. And I think that's the name of the game. If you don't like what someone's doing, be respectful. This is what I think, and this is why I think it, rather than this is what I think, and you're an idiot also. Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah. P.S. You're super dumb.
Yeah, that's what half them are. And I just never. I don't know. I don't respond well to that. Like, I don't respond at all most of the time now.
Yeah, and most people don't actually. So that's kind of the way it goes. So let's talk about those outdoor enclosures, because I know you've had some heat from those as well. But I find those incredibly interesting, and I know there's a lot of Americans that do that all the time because they have different conditions. So tell me about that whole process, because A, what made you decide to do that to begin with, and then B, kind of the process that you went through to make it happen.
So I think we talked about earlier about having the most natural environment available for your animals. And I'd like to preface it with, I live in the Niagara region, which is, I know people from the Congo that come here and can't believe how hot it is in the summer. Like, to them, like, we always say, oh, it's hotter than Africa. It is literally hotter than Africa here, and more humid a lot of the time. So I live in a perfect environment to have things like jeweled lacerdas, which come from parts of Spain. And we have almost the exact same climate or heat, humidity levels in the summer. So I can do that. But what made me want to do it is vitamin D vitamin D from the sun is better outside, period. Like, there is no matter how you do it. And the UVB level is just more natural. So if you can safely do that, I think it's actually more healthy for the animal to have natural sun if you can provide it with the proper humidity and the proper heat, and also give them a place to get out of the sun as well, and they have enough sun. You have to make sure that it works out for the animal and their care requirements. But like you said, I mean, no one hates on Camp Kendon. He keeps everything outside. Sure, he lives in Florida, but the climate here in the Niagara region is very much like Florida in summer. So I feel like certain species, you can do that. And I've had Bob, my jeweled lacerda, who came to me with metabolic bone disease. This will be his 5th summer outside this year, and he puts on weight every summer. So I don't know what the heck he's eating out there, but we got some good bugs in the Niagara region, I guess, because I don't know. I think that it's beneficial. I guess my long-winded what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and it's something that I would love to do when I have a yard at some point in the future. But in terms of that jeweled lacerda, he came to you. How old was he? Was he pretty young?
They don't know. I was the 3rd owner of him, and they thought he was about 3 years old, and he was full grown. So it is possible that he was 3 years old, but I honestly don't have a clue. So if that's the truth, then maybe he's 8 years old now, and I don't know, he's halfway through, but he's looking good, especially with the little T-Rex arms, because they're all weathered from metabolic bone disease. But he seems to be a pretty happy guy. Yeah.
So in terms of his physical condition, he had some bone deformation and whatnot.
Yeah, like his kind of hands kind of look like that a little bit. They don't really work properly in the front, and then his tail has like a little bulbous notch on the back. So he does have metabolic bone disease. But that's not curable. There's nothing, just you have to provide the best life they can possibly have. So I was kind of reluctant to keep him outside. But when I did the first year, it seemed like he was acting more normally. Like, inside, he was kind of skittish. Outside, I walk up to the cage and he just kind of like looks at me, like a lizard does. So, and he was eating better and he put on weight. So I've been doing that ever since. And if I could live in a place like South Florida, I would keep as many things outside as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think we just see reptiles as indoor pets almost, and they definitely don't have to be. So the enclosure that you built is just it's pretty big, right? It's maybe you can talk about the dimensions and sort of how you built that cage.
So I think it's, if I remember right, it's 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 3 feet high. I'm pretty sure 5 by 3 by 3, which is way bigger than you need. To be honest, I built it for a boa constrictor, and then we just decided not to keep that boa outside because the temperament of it, we were just trying to work on it at the time. So I kept him outside. I kept some bearded dragons outside one year when it was very dry. Like, the humidity was somewhere around 35% for most of that summer. So I've done that. But in the video, the one that I made last year, I actually made for a ball python. People did not like this. And to a certain extent, I agree that the rubbing might hurt their face. So I kept her in there for a little while. There was no rubbing, but last summer was very cool and wet and it just didn't work. So this year, I think I'm going to use that enclosure, which is a little bit smaller. It's 3 by 2 by 2.5 for my Sudan plated lizard, which actually needs a humidity level of between 50 and 70%, which is exactly what this area is. And they come from parts of Africa that have very similar climates. So big enclosures, because I've got a huge yard. So why not make the biggest enclosure you could possibly make that can, give them everything they need in terms of places to hide, and they can still find their food and water.
Right. Yeah. And in terms of the rubbing, it's because the mesh, it's like a metal mesh, I guess, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah. Well, on the one that I made for that, I used a metal mesh because you can see through it better, because metal can be stronger and thinner. The jeweled Lacerda cage is made of a plastic mesh, so it probably wouldn't be that bad. I may try that eventually, but this year my plans only are to keep the jeweled Lacerda as always, and then this year I've got Sudan plated lizard, which I've just gotten September. So I'm going to try to keep her out there. Man, she's put on a lot of weight. She looks really good. I'm excited to see what she's like outside.
That's so cool. So in terms of like feeding, do you specifically feed them, or are they just eating whatever's out there, or you supplement it?
So I make sure that anything that grows into the cage, I research what it is. And I come from a plant background. I sold plants for a living for 6 years. So I've got a pretty good understanding of what grows around here. So I make sure that whatever is growing in my yard is not going to hurt their health, is not poisonous to them. And then if it grows in their cage and they eat it, I don't care. And if in terms of bugs, there's no insects around here or arachnids that are poisonous to these animals either. So then I'm good. And I know people will say, oh, well, what about the ticks? You got a lot of ticks in your area. That is true, but I've never found a tick on any of my animals. And if I did, I would remove that tick and put them back inside. So I always monitor them first, and that's important. If anyone's watching this, I'm going to do that too. Just make sure you monitor them and you do your research first. It takes a long time to know what you're doing, but there is a good way to do it. And there is a beneficial way to do it for sure.
And in terms of, there's no supplementary heat or anything, right? You're just using the sun entirely for heat. And then,
yeah, and if it gets too cold, I'll bring him in, just because I don't have a power line to make a shed or something like that. But we're very lucky here where it doesn't go down below 20 degrees Celsius. What's that? 68 Fahrenheit, I think, at night most of the time. And if it does, I keep an eye on the weather report, and I actually get alerts on my phone using the Google whatever weather app. If it goes below 65, I know, because it rings me like it's an Amber Alert or something, just so I don't miss it.
And then what about rain?
So I make sure that the one thing that I guess I'm good at with building things is making sure that I have proper drainage. And I understand drainage well because of my background in plants. So I always make sure there's a place where it's dry. And the first year when I kept bearded dragons outside, I made sure that the drainage layer, I tested that for like a month first, so that there's an area where they have a weatherproof container or hide, I guess. So I left them outside in the rain, and then I measured the humidity inside and then made sure that there's no dampness at all. And it works. Now you have to do this the proper way, and there's, maybe I'll do a video about this eventually. But if it's a torrential downpour for like 4 days, then yeah, I'll probably bring him in. The Lacerda has always been fine. Just make sure that there's not puddles everywhere and there are dry areas. Otherwise, scale rot and all that nasty stuff you don't want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such an interesting idea, and I think I would definitely try it if I had the space to do it, because, like you said, the natural rays from the sun are so important, and you'd have to kind of release the tendency to want to micromanage the environment, right? As keepers inside, like, we just have this, everything needs to be laser focused with the temperatures and the humidity, and when you go outside, clearly you have to throw some of that out the window. But the animals are so good at regulating. Like, if they want to be more humid, they're going to be closer to the soil. If they want to get away, he'll probably move or climb up higher on top of the hide or something like that, I'm sure. What about it? Do you take like a laser temperature gun out there and sort of measure hot spots to see where they are?
Yeah, all the time. And those little microclimate things that you put in your house, and it says the humidity and the temperature for the last 24 hours? I put those, so I make like burrows for them as well. And I would use just like PVC pipe for this. And I make burrows and I stick those things in there. And then I come back after 2 days and I find out how cold did it get? How humid did it get? How hot did it get? And I put those in 3 or 4 places. So I know, okay, well, it gets down to 65 degrees here and it only gets up to about 80. So this is perfect for a cool side. And on this side, it got up to 140, say, which is too hot. But right below that in the hide, it only got up to 100 degrees, which is, perfect for a Sudan plated lizard, for example. So you have an option. They can either get hotter than they need to or cooler than they need to, but in the middle, they always have that gradient and they can get exactly where they need to go.
Yeah, and they're not trapped in that 140 degree section. Like, if for some reason he wanted to go there, he could, but he's not going to spend more than a couple minutes there before he goes and finds some shade.
Right, and I think that's the interesting thing too. If you work for a living and you can't be at home, between the hours of 9 to 5, you still need to measure during those times. So if you take a laser pointer at the beginning and end of the day, it might look good. But then if you were to put a 24-hour, how hot did it get? Oh man, I didn't know that it got up to 140, and if it's 140 everywhere, you're going to cook your animal. If it's 140 over here and 80 over here, then you're A-okay. You're good to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. But you're so right. I mean, people watch Kenan all the time, and it's just part of the life in Florida. Everything gets to stay outside, and he hates keeping animals inside. But for some reason, when Canadians do it, they get mad.
And not only that, but the air quality too. Like, sure, the air quality in your home is probably good, but outside, especially if you live in a place, I mean, it's kind of smoggy here, but the air quality is still better outside than it would be inside. And the stagnation of the air, although I think reptiles are fine. Like I just think it's something to consider also, that if you have a breeze going, that's something that's more natural. And I don't know if I've ever read a study that says, yeah, the wind or a breeze is better, but that air is constantly moving, and likely it's a better quality of air than they get inside, which is something that I don't think really anyone ever talks about.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, you don't hear a lot about movement of air, and that's one of the things I see all the time now. People are starting in that sort of the intense vivarium world, those guys that go really hardcore. You start seeing them add like small fans and whatnot to keep the airflow happening, and but really in terms of most people in the hobby, that's not a thing. People just, you might even seal up your vents to keep humidity in.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about living here. We've got an escarpment all around us, and Lake Ontario there and Lake Erie there, so we have this humidity that gets trapped inside, but the air doesn't get stagnant like it would if you trapped all the vents, because we have a breeze. It's outside. So I think it's honestly the perfect microclimate here. And you can actually make different microclimates in your yard depending on the species. So if you have a species that needs 90%, you can make it so that there's a part that's 90%. Of course, if you need a species that's 30% and the ambient humidity is only 50, is up to 50, you can't really do much to take away the humidity, but you can always add some in a smaller section of your yard, which is something very interesting in and of itself, I think.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, you guys have a very interesting climate. Our summer climate here in Manitoba is very similar. We have a ridiculous amount of humidity because we have 2 big lakes in the province, and the prairie heat is really quite hot. But in the winter, we go real cold and super, super dry. Do you guys have dryness in the winter, or you're still pretty humid?
It's really humid, and we don't get super cold here. Like a lot of my friends, and back in the day when the oil boom happened, they all moved out west to Edmonton and Fort St. John. And there, like in Edmonton, if you go outside, it's minus 40. Minus 40 is minus 40. But here, if it's minus 8, because it's so humid, it feels colder here than it did there. And anyone who's ever lived here and lived there will tell you it's worse here, just because you feel like wet and gross and cold and wind, and yeah, it doesn't get as cold as it does like where you are, but the humidity, man, it makes it disgustingly cold.
It does terrible. Actually. Yeah. Because here I actually don't mind like a minus 30, minus 40, and some people might think that's crazy, but what you dress for it, and it's actually not that bad. But I remember a few years ago I was in Florida and I was training and swimming, and we were training in an outdoor pool, and I think it got real cold. It was like minus 1 or something, which is kind of laughable for a Winnipegger, but yeah. But it was so humid, it was like bone chilling, like it just like got deep into your body how cold it was. And I was really shocked at how much that humidity can make you feel way colder.
It permeates you, and and here too, I'll like go shovel my driveway, but when I come in, there's like my beard and my mustache are like crystallized.
Yeah.
Where I've done cold areas like in Edmonton, and it's just it's cold, it feels cold, but it just doesn't like permeate you. It doesn't like get inside. It's a weird thing to explain. It's really hard to explain unless you felt it.
Yeah, it is. So in the wintertime inside, is it low humidity inside your reptile room, for example, or is it actually pretty easy to maintain humidity?
It's pretty easy to maintain, just because there's certain enclosures that have screen tops that keep humid, and I go the extra mile to mist them all the time. But my reptile room is in the next room over here, and my furnace room is behind me. So the furnace kind of sucks out the humidity. So it doesn't ever get to like 90 or 80% even in my reptile room, about 50 or even down to like 40. So I can keep leopard geckos safely, and I've never had a respiratory issue. But also I can keep my boa constrictor or my blue tongue skink, which needs about a 70% humidity level, and I just close up some of the vents and I spray them down, and it stays around 65-70% in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. That makes sense. So in terms, I know you've mentioned a few of the animals that you have. So what is in your collection right now? Obviously you have the leopard geckos and a boa and a blue tongue skink and the lacerda, but what else?
So I still have the very first leopard gecko that I ever got. His name is Cheech.
That's awesome.
That's this is Littlefoot. She's a girl, but that's her dad. And so I've got him. I've got a bunch of leopard geckos. My boa constrictor. I got a Dumerals boa a couple weeks ago, and that's kind of my newest. She's still in quarantine, of course. Maybe turning into my favorite reptile. I don't know. I love her. She's great. Ball pythons. Some crested geckos. I've got 4 crested geckos. I've got some axolotls as well. They're my girlfriends, but those are something that a lot of people don't talk about. And when you make videos about them, like, people don't watch them. I guess no one really cares about aquatic salamanders. But I think that's pretty much it. I keep a lot of the same species, but I'd like to, and the Sudan plated lizard, of course, as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty good collection. You got a little menagerie of different things, different areas of the world, which is always nice.
Yeah, I've always liked to keep something from every continent. When I was a kid, that's all I watched was like nature shows. And even I say it when I was a kid, that last night I watched 2 nature documentaries. So it's just, I'm just
What
obsessed.
did you watch?
So it was this one from 2004. I found it on Amazon Prime. It was called like Into the Wild or something, or it wasn't Into the Wild, but it was about snakes. And it was really awful because the narrator had a phony British accent, was calling venomous snakes poisonous. So it wasn't the greatest, but they had some really good information about Burmese pythons, if it was true. And the one that I watched before that, it was another one that was from like the 1970s. I think that was called Into the Wild. So I watched basically not everything there is to watch, but I like finding different stuff that some people don't even know exists. And it's just very interesting to see how they talked about things in like the 70s, even like 2004. And then now it's so different, completely different.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think, like, for example, Planet Earth, when that came out, that really blew, I think, a lot of our minds, like that initial documentary. I mean, there were so many other ones before that, but that was something that just totally changed my whole perspective on animals. And yeah, it is kind of cool to be able to keep something from different parts of the world. And you can say, this is from Africa, or this is from Australia, or whatever it is. And when people come over, you have this sort of almost like United Nations of animals in your reptile room.
Yeah, that's what, like I was saying before, I think that it's every part of the world is so interesting because it's so, if you really think about how small Earth is, but there's so many different areas and different animals and parallel evolutions, which I think is interesting too. Like my Dumel's boa is from Madagascar, and my BCI, the common boa, is from South America, which are nowhere near each other. But if you really look at them, they're pretty darn similar. So to me, that parallel type of evolution is so interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that's the really cool thing about reptiles. And I think that, well, I guess fish probably have this as well, that you don't get to keep exotic animals from different parts of the world and many other pet hobbies. I mean, if you're going to be in the mammals, like you're going to deal with, rats or hamsters and whatnot. But fish and reptiles give you that opportunity to create different slices of nature inside your space, or whatever room, if your reptile room or your living room, doesn't matter. That's one of my favorite parts about it.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think it's cool. There's certain animals that I've foregone getting because they need such a cool temperature in comparison. Mandarin rat snakes. There was one at an expo a few months ago. And if you know what a Mandarin rat snake is, it's hard to have that in your hands and then not say, I'll give you whatever you want for this animal. This is amazing. Mm-hmm. But if they get to the temperature that I keep in my reptile room for everyone else, including some of the rat snakes, then they will perish. And I don't have, I've got an axolotl room here, but I don't know, this is my girlfriend's domain and I don't really want to put a snake in here. And my Crested Geckos, right? I can't put them in the reptile room either, because if it spikes up to 82, they might get inside their 85 and then the leopard or the Crested Geckos won't do well. So to me, things that can be so similar need such different climates and temperatures. And I don't know, I think it makes you more knowledgeable about reptiles in general to know the differences between them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, the Mandarin rat snakes are amazing looking for sure. They're just beautiful. How cool do they need to be?
I forget when I did the research, it was like 78 or something like that. Like they can't get above, I think it was like 82. It was something very low. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I was talking to the gentleman about it, and I knew that they needed to be kept cool. And then when I did the research there, I decided not to go with it. I just couldn't do it safely. And I think that there's a difference between buying something impulsively and having like no setup, where here I've got tons of setups in case I have something, in my quarantine rack. If something comes up, hey, I can't keep this, I need to get rid of it now, I'm moving tomorrow, which has happened before. Then I have, but with this Mandarin Rat Snake, it just wasn't the case. I don't have anywhere I could put this thing where it would, live really.
Yeah, that's one of the ones, like you don't need any supplementary heat with that, I guess. It's just room temperature as long as it's decent.
Some people say like a little type of heat pad type thing, really low, but I don't know, there's a bunch of ways to do it. Low temperature stuff to me is very interesting. And then once I live in a larger house, I would love to have a second room for things like Crested Geckos and maybe a Mandarin Rat Snake and other type of animals that need a lower temperature. But I mean, I'm pretty cool with the reptile room in there. And if it's ever cold and I come in from shoveling and I got like ice on my beard, I can walk in there. It's 80 degrees and it's like walking to a sauna. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the tricky things about going to a reptile expo is not coming back with an animal, and you need to be able to control that impulse. And I love expos. I think they're awesome, but I think there is that sort of dark side to them sometimes that a lot of people will get sent home with an animal that, the person really needed to make the sale, and they sort of sacrifice potentially the animal actually.
And I use the term the reptile trade or the pet trade a lot. People don't like that. It's a hobby, it's not a trade. But at the end of the day, man, if you are breeding reptiles as your profession, you need to sell those animals in order to put food on the table and keep a roof over your head. So that does happen. I am glad that I'm trying to make money doing other things than just selling reptiles, because I never want to be that guy that I have to choose between selling you something that I know you can't handle and is probably going to not do well, or put food. I don't want to do that. I don't want to choose between. So if I can make money other ways doing this and not have to worry about selling the animals, that's just why I started really ramping up the YouTube channel, doing other things. And I want to educational shows is something that I'd love to start doing as well. I like the idea of making money doing your passion, but I don't like the idea of putting yourself in a situation where you have to do something maybe a little bit shady in order to continue paying your bills.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I think there was this moment in the reptile industry where typically people assume the only way to make money was through selling. And now we have so many different opportunities, and you do not need to have, I've said this so many times on the show, thousands of animals to have credibility here. You can have a single leopard gecko and just know everything there is to know about it and still add some value here without feeling like you need to go buy a rack full of geckos to be able to talk about it.
And I think that that's really catching on, and you're actually more credible a lot of the time if you only have, I think I only have like 30 something animals now. I used to have 70 something when I had all the ball pythons, and I feel more responsible now. I'm not stressed out. I spend less time in the reptile room working and more time interacting. And I think that's the new wave, is that you don't need to have 100 animals. If you only have, 13 animals, like, you can be just as knowledgeable as the other guy. It's a quality thing over quantity. And a lot of the time, if you have more animals than you can care for, you don't have time to learn about them and continue to grow. You only have time to maintain. And that's actually probably detrimental to your credibility than anything else.
Oh, totally. Yeah, you could easily get overwhelmed. And even I only have 6 animals, and sometimes I've found myself thinking like, wow, I haven't actually spent time with the animals, watching them or interacting with them in the way that I want. I just end up cleaning them and feeding them and kind of leaving the room. And I always have to remind myself, no, you got to enjoy them a little bit. Like the other day I looked at my carpet python and I was like, I feel like I haven't looked at you in a long time, Yeah. And I only have 6. So if you get up to like 100 or 50, 60 animals, you're really just becoming all you're doing is caring for them at the base, and you can't enjoy them in the way that you probably could.
And even like the space thing too, like with you've got 6, but all of your enclosures look beautiful. And that's why I watched your channels, because you were doing things differently than I don't need to say his name. You know who I'm talking about, who has a facility and they're all in racks. And obviously that guy has changed. If you want to get more on that topic, we can. But it's interesting that was very acceptable even 5-6 years ago. No one cared. And then now that's the most hated person on, in this niche. And even, now he's got a zoo. So with me, I think that, having all these animals, like 70 animals, and they're all in racks, I would much rather cut down the collection, make sure they all go to good homes, of course, if you're doing this, and then have, Littlefoot here lives with Sarah, which was her clutch mate, but they live in a big enclosure. It's very naturalistic, natural substrate. They have different water bowls, food bowls, the whole thing. So I don't know. I think there's a right way to do it if you have more than 6 animals, but also if you have 6, you're the guy who makes enclosures and has, your channel is more dedicated to how to make animals' lives better than I have 30 species, let's do 30 care guides. That type of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think there's a transition happening, and it's very cool to see. I feel like I don't see your boa very much. Is your boa kind of mean, or?
I don't like to call her mean, but I mean, we're working with her. We're working with her, and I'll be honest, I don't like getting bit by snakes. I don't like getting bit by 6-foot snakes, especially. I've got a little sister who's a little bit crazy, and she comes over and handles that boa like it's no big deal. So I think that's kind of like given me the cojones to just kind of, if I take a bite, I take a bite. So I think that I'm working with her more just because like I'm less worried about it. And also with boas is they are very different in their body language. And I think I'm good at reading the body language of a ball python. If I'm about to get bit, I know it. Like there's really no surprise. But with this boa, she strikes so differently. So I think just having a little bit more time and with less reptiles, that I'm going to be able to bring her out more. And that is a video that's coming soon. We did one about how to handle reptiles that might be a little bit more cantankerous. But yeah, it's something that I've been working on for a while, and I feel more confident now. Where if I'm talking to you like this, how many times have I looked at this gecko? I'm not worried about her biting me. With that boa constrictor, I'm worried that it's going to take me 3 hours to film the video because I'm just going to be kind of looking like, what is this thing doing all the time? That's basically why I don't see her.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's kind of an unusual behavior for boas. Typically, boas are pretty calm.
Yeah.
Did she come? Did you get her as a baby and then she was always crazy, or?
No, I got her from a buddy of mine who he got engaged and he moved in with his in-laws. And they're like, yeah, no, you can't have snakes, man. Snakes are weird. So he just showed up at my house one day and he's like, hey, do you want this? I'll take it back in a year. This was 3 years ago. So it's my boa now. And I just, at the beginning, I was trying to like handle her more, but she was small. She was very little. She was at that stage when they're babies and they're still pretty cantankerous. So I probably should have put in more work then. I had too many animals to, it's really my fault. When she was younger, I should have put in more work. And then now that she's bigger, it's just a little bit more risky putting in the work that I'm putting in now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you have to take the bite from the 6-foot snake, which is not fun.
It's not fun, man. Not at all.
So future plans with the channel, do you have a vision for where you want to take it? Or you kind of talked about some educational things, or are you just kind of taking it video by video?
I'm kind of taking it video by video, but in the grand scheme of things, I started this as a purely educational channel. And then I've realized through the good comments and bad that I am not an expert. I always knew I wasn't an expert, but I would like to continue growing and maybe add a little bit more entertainment as well. I think anyone who's watched the channel from before and now, the editing is getting better. I think at the end of the day, I'm trying to get good enough with the production that keeps your attention so that you can learn in a more interesting way than reading a care guide that was written by someone who's never told a joke in his life. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to make it, the entire purpose of the channel is let's learn together, but let's have fun doing it. So I think at the end of the day, I'm just trying to build an audience, get better, learn from everybody, and have this kind of back and forth. I'm teaching you something, you teach me something, and let's kind of learn together, which is the motto of the channel.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And yeah, clearly you're very good at being on camera, and it is entertaining, and it's clearly working because your audience is just, increasing every single day. I'm sure you're getting, I don't know, a couple thousand subscribers a month, it seems like.
Yeah, it's weird, man. Like I was getting, I think last month it was 3,200, and then this month it's like down to 15. It's weird. I think with this whole thing that's going on in the world, the analytics are not pointing the way that they were before, and people don't care as much about their hobbies. They're trying to, they're watching the Philip DeFrancos of the world talking about actual news stuff that matters. Because right now, at the end of the day, I mean, if you have a leopard gecko and it's living, there's more important things in the world right now going on. So I think that's going to change. But there was a time when I was getting like 100, 140 subscribers a day. And I like that because when you put in, 12 hours, 14 hours into the production from beginning to end of a video, it's nice that people watch. And I think that's the thing. I'm not making $1 million. I'm not making enough to even live off of the channel, right? The entire goal is to have a big enough audience where it's worth the amount of time that you put into it, and you're teaching enough people and getting enough feedback. Because at the end of the day, sure, making a couple bucks is great, but being able to start a Discord channel, have 100 people join and talk to people, or have comments come in, hey man, you've inspired me. Or at Reptile Expos, when people come up to you and want to shake your hand, dude, I did this, I upgraded my enclosure because of something that you said, or that is honestly the best feeling in the world. And that is why I started the channel. And it's really paying off. Just the feedback from people who watch, it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, it's really awesome when you can create this community that sort of unites around the message and shows up for every video. And you, like you said, it's a mutual relationship. It's not you just talking down and saying this is what it is. It's like, hey, what do you guys think? I created this list, but what would be on your list? And that's what I love about those list videos, because it does really engage your audience so thoroughly. And
I change my opinion a lot because of those. And that's why I never speak in absolutes. I always say, this is how I do it. This is how you could do it, because it's always changing. The way you kept bearded dragons 5 years ago to now even is different. And I'm going to make more videos about, hey, this is what I thought, and this is how I've changed. And so that the back and forth thing seems genuine, which it is. I genuinely think that the input that I get from people watching is super beneficial to me. And there's a lot of people out there that know more than you and I, but they just, for whatever reason, didn't start a podcast or didn't start a channel. So if they can teach us who do want to do these things and project and put ourselves out there, then we can kind of take those voices, voice them to people who want to need that information.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that would be awesome. I think I know that would probably resonate really well with the audience, just learning how people have changed. People like that story. People don't like the, hey, this is how I've always done it and I'm an expert. People like, this is where I started and this is where I am now. So that is fantastic. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today. This was great. Can you let everybody know where you can be found, not physically, but online?
Yeah, so the website, by the time this is out, it's going to launch today, so about 2 weeks ago, if this comes out in 2 weeks. So wickenswickedreptiles.com, and if you are looking to buy an animal, you're local, I've got some stuff cooking in the incubator. On social media, Wickens Chickens or Wickens Wicked Reptiles on everything. And, if you want to subscribe to the channel, I'll make a top 5 list. If you put it in the comments section below, I'll make that video next. So
that's awesome. Oh, great. Well, thank you very much for chatting with me. It was a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, that is the end of today's episode. Adam, thank you very much for joining me. Definitely go check out Adam's content on his Instagram and his YouTube. Links are in the show notes below. As we said in the episode, he creates these really interesting lists, so that's definitely worth going to check out. He has some really good care guides on his channel as well, and he seems to go live on a pretty consistent basis, or at least a relatively consistent basis, so that might be something you're interested in too. Thank you very much to Custom Reptile Habitats for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. If you do want to support the podcast, go check out Custom Reptile Habitats. If you do make a purchase, a small commission does come back to me, and of course that helps support the show. If you'd like to show your support in another way, definitely share the episode on social media and give the podcast a 5-star rating on the Apple Podcasting app, or go to animalsathome.ca/shop and pick yourself up a sweater or a t-shirt. $5 does get donated to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. I will see you guys next week.